born back in 2016. And let me just make sure I can advance this. Should I point there? Yeah, I'm doing something wrong. Let's see. Oh, it says- Okay. Sorry about that. So the idea for this festival happened in 2016, and some of you may know Vivian Howard, the chef who has The Chef and the Farmer in Kinston as a PBS TV show. She's been getting national recognition. She was publishing her first book, and Scuppernong Books, our independent bookseller downtown, which is a wonderful store if you've never been there. She was doing a book signing there, and there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people lining the street around the block on South Elm Street, waiting to have Vivian sign her book. And Steve Collier, who is a person that had just recently moved to Greensboro from Miami. He had been very involved in the Miami Book Fair, which is the country's largest literary festival and book fair. Incredible recognition. He was really involved in that as a volunteer, and he saw all these people. He was he actually lives in Jamestown, but was frequenting Greensboro, and just thought, wow, this is amazing that this many people would come out for a literary event. He had begun to hear a little bit about just not only Greensboro's, but North Carolina's incredibly rich literary history, and started asking around, do we have any kind of literary festival or book fair? And Greensboro did not, despite all the amazing resources that we have here. And so he started talking to the owners of Scuppernong Books and a few other folks in the community and said, let's try to give this a go. Let's see if we can host a literary festival. So that was up and running in the organization of that in 2017. And we held the first in-person festival in May of 2018. And held a festival in 2019. 2020, we ended up canceling just because all the planning, of course, was ready to go and in place for 2020. And when things shut down, we just didn't quite have enough time to regroup to make that virtual. We ended up doing some more expansive virtual programming throughout the year that year. And then 2021 was a virtual festival, which was really, really successful. And we're incredibly excited to be back in person in 2022. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the highlights of that. But the whole idea, and if you want to pop, the whole idea of this was to bring readers and writers together to evoke conversations, instill an appreciation for continual learning and reading. This has been done largely by a volunteer group. We have a part-time program manager that sort of helps wrangle all the logistics of the authors, but the rest of the activities are led by volunteers, which is really impressive. And as I was talking to Steve earlier about those volunteer jobs in which you sort of assume a little bit of a staff role, this is certainly one of those organizations. But we've had over 500 volunteers help to make this really successful. So if you want to pop the next slide, thank you. So just to give you a little idea about Greensboro Bound's mission, bringing readers and writers together throughout the year, getting authors and their books in front of readers, which is a really important piece of it, producing the Greensboro Bound Literary Festival each year in May, and then promoting inclusivity by producing programs that confront systemic racism and oppression in our community and beyond. And I will say, I guess let's go to the next slide. I'll say a little bit about our process for selecting authors. We typically have, the first year, I think we were just so excited that we had 90 authors, and it was a little overwhelming for everybody. So we kind of settled into the 50-ish authors that we bring in each year, and we typically pair authors, put panels together, so you'll see a really wide variety of topics and genres and formats for this. We select authors in a couple of different ways. Certainly, we always look at those national, really hot authors that are on their publisher's book tour, in which the publishers are paying for them to do their tours around the country. And that's a way in which you can get an author that normally you wouldn't be able to afford to have come. So we look at that route. We then also look at sort of the topics of the day, things that we think are interesting for people to think about and talk about, and begin to put together authors maybe from a more regional area for that. And then we also have an open call in which we invite authors to submit a proposal for speaking or being a part of a panel. And we've had a lot of success with that, particularly this year. So we have it's really a nice mix of national, regional, and local authors that are a part of this. So we're really excited. This year, as I said, we've got about 50, I think 55 authors coming. We have 4, I would say, headliners this year. And Amor Tolls is one of those. Many of you have probably read anybody read A Gentleman in Moscow? That was a great book. I highly recommend it. Of course, his new book is called The Lincoln Highway. And he'll be speaking. We're doing this in partnership with UNCG. As Tom mentioned, the festival really takes place in downtown Greensboro. Our sort of headquarters, I would say, is the Greensboro Cultural Center. And then we have events that happen in the History Museum, several venues within the Cultural Center. The International Civil Rights Museum is another venue. And then for our major events, we have done those in partnership with area colleges and universities. So UNCG is sponsoring this conversation with Amor Tolls. It will be in the Cone Ballroom on UNCG's campus on Thursday, May 19th at 7. So that's something to look forward to. The other keynote is happening on Friday evening, and this will be taking place in the Van Dyke Performance Space in the Greensboro Cultural Center. Jason Moth, who won the National Book Award for Fiction in 2021, will be speaking. He's from North Carolina. He lives in a little tiny town in the eastern part of the state where he grew up, and he'll be speaking with Holly Goddard Jones. But Jason Moth wrote Hell of a Book. Has anybody read Hell of a Book? Okay, nobody. It is amazing. I really, really encourage you. It discusses some deep topics, but in a way that is engaging and understanding and with a lot of humor. I happened to hear Jason speak maybe a month or 2 ago to the North Carolina Historical Book Club, and he is an incredible, incredible speaker. I think you would learn a lot and be really, even if you think you don't care about the topic or you don't care about him, I really recommend it. So that's going to be on Friday evening. And then let's go to the next slide. I would say our really big keynote this year is Nicole Hannah-Jones. She'll be speaking on Saturday evening in Harrison Auditorium on the campus of NCA&T. And anybody know that name? Good or bad? Yeah, a lot of controversy there, particularly in the state of North Carolina. But she has an incredible message to talk about. She writes, of course, for the New York Times Magazine and was the creator of the 1619 Project. And she'll be speaking with Dr. Jelani Favors, who teaches at A&T. This is a part of a series that Greensboro Bound co-sponsored with A&T, particularly their Bluford libraries. And the Bluford Library staff applied for a grant from the North Carolina Humanities Council to do a series on redlining. And so they did we've done a series, it's a 4-part series with Nicole Hannah-Jones as the keynote for that. Those 3 other series have happened over the last month or so, and just looking at the history of redlining on a broad scale, on a national scale, sort of the long-term impacts of that are still being felt today, but then also bringing it down to the local level and looking very specifically at Greensboro and what happened here. So we have offered for, I don't know if I said this, all these programming is 100% free to the community. That's been a real core value of ours from the very beginning, to keep things free. We are doing a ticketing system this year because for especially some of these keynotes, we have had sellout situations in the past, and we want to make sure we're knowing who's coming. And so in the case of Nicole Hannah-Jones, we released half the tickets online, which were reserved within about 5 days. And we reserved the other half of the tickets as paper tickets that are being distributed through several public libraries in East Greensboro. We're really making an effort to try to get East Greensboro residents there. And we'll be kind of monitoring the pickup of those tickets, and we'll probably re-release some online tickets. But if you're interested in that, I would encourage you to sign up and go ahead and at least get on the waiting list. And then when those extra tickets are released, you'll be able to do that. So our last keynote is going to be on Sunday afternoon, May 22nd. Ann Hood, who has just, her book is coming out May 3rd, called Fly Girl. She was a flight attendant, and this is a sort of a half like memoir, half work of fiction, and she'll be speaking with local author Julia Ridley Smith. And Julia has just published a book called The Sum of Trifles. Some of you may remember her parents operated an antique store here that was called, do you remember what it was? Do you know, Robbie? It was on Simpson Street in Fisher Park, and it was, yeah, I can't think of it. It might, I don't think it was called Ridley Smith Antiques, Smith something Antiques. Anyway, a lot of people knew her family, and she has written a memoir really about growing up in that family and her parents, and it's wonderful too. So I would highly recommend you help us close out the festival with that. So we'll go to the next slide. And then this is just a picture of the many, many other authors that will be here that particular weekend. If we go to the next slide, if anybody's super interested, you can take a picture of this and go straight to our website for how you get the tickets. As I said, everything is free. If you don't get a ticket and last minute you just want to come and go, you can absolutely do that. We encourage people to do that. It just helps us keep track of who's there, and helps us for future marketing efforts when we know. All right, let's see, next slide. So that's kind of it about the festival. The other really huge partnership we have is with Guilford County Schools, in which we bring authors into schools. Of course, we're focusing primarily on Title I schools. We did this in person, bringing authors into classes, and then when we had to go virtual, we actually found a real silver lining in that, because we were able to exponentially reach so many more students. So we are now doing recorded presentations, but the teachers actually work with the author in advance so that the children have exposure to the books, are able to actually ask questions to the author in advance. And then when that recorded session takes place, the author can actually address some of those questions from the students at the time during that recording. And it also gives teachers the flexibility to use that programming at whatever point within their curriculum sort of makes sense. So it's been a really powerful program. These are just some of the speakers, the authors that have been doing our Authors Engaging Students program for this spring semester. The Guilford County Schools Library and Media Services Department is monitoring results from this. They're seeing that after an author speaks, whether it's in person or virtual, they're noticing a 471% increase in book checkouts by the students. So like really significant, instant sort of gratification for that. So we'll go to the next slide. Part of each time we bring an author into the school, we also purchase books by those authors that we put in each of those schools. So to date, really since 2018, we have, Greensboro Valley has donated over 5,000 books to Guilford County Schools. The other thing that's significant about that is that when you look at the school libraries, the books that they have are largely written by white males, no offense, guys, but largely written by white males, which is not the large percentage of what Guilford County Schools student body population looks like. And they also have a lot of age on. They don't have a lot of recent books. So with this addition of these books into those schools, the kids are beginning to actually see authors who look more like they do and can have a connection to them. We had one little kid that said afterwards, you know, I had no idea that I could be an author. You know, he was something like just that little spark hit. So we'll go to the next slide. We have a lot of community partners. I've mentioned some of those, and we certainly welcome continuing partnerships in the community as we try to keep this festival 100% free. So next slide. So that, in a nutshell, is what Greensboro Bound is all about. We are beginning a pilot project with Ready for School, Ready for Life on looking at doing a program for pre-K, which we're excited about to just test that out and see how that might work. We're constantly looking for ways to continue to reach people at an age that can then make a lifelong difference for them. So I encourage you, I think I've got one final slide, just with our social media, Greensboro Bound. We use a lot of volunteers during the festival itself. It's a fun way to give back during the festival, but also have a chance to see authors. And it's everything from helping to wrangle authors from one place to another to helping manage a venue and making sure things are going well in that space, checking tickets, that sort of thing. So if I know Rotaries are big on volunteerism, so we would love to have you all volunteer if you're interested. And of course, donations, as I said, helping us keep this 100% free are always welcome from organizations like Rotaries, but also individuals as well. So I'd love to take any questions if you have, and I don't know if I said, I'm the board chair of that board. I started initially as an early board member. I joined that first year and have been the board chair, I guess, for the last year. So it's been a pleasure, fun organization to be a part of, but happy to answer any questions. Buster?
Will any of this be available virtually?
So Immortals is being recorded and will be available virtual. And because of Nicole Hannah-Jones, just this early success we've had with her, we are live streaming that. So it'll be available live streamed that day of, but there will be no recording and distribution of that following. But those are the only two this year. Any other questions?
So we work with Bank of America, Hornets and Swarm do, based on a huge literacy program that we just hosted this past year, where we had fans bring books in to donate. I think I'd like to find a way to maybe look to work with, because you're in Title I schools as we are, and you already have a built-in audience. And I would like to find a way that we could maybe help enhance some of your programming with some of our programming, and maybe we can talk offline about how we can enhance, especially these kids in Title I's, which, as most of you know, 80 some Title I schools or 60 some, and a lot are in the eastern part of our area. And these kids are really starving for attention as it relates to education, and there's not enough of us, because as we were saying, I chair the Junior Achievement Board, and the financial literacy piece for us is really impacting them somehow too. But this is another great way of us as organizations, we can maybe support you. Sure. So maybe we can connect after this.
Great. Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, and I also love that connection with sports and literature. I think sometimes that's a way that you kind of hook people in a way that they think they're interested in one thing and find out they like something else too. That's great. Thank you, Steve.
Well, and I'm sorry, our friend Jim Kennedy isn't here because, you know, he's involved in Reading Connections, which of course targets adult literacy mostly. But the partnering that you're doing with the schools and with other community groups, I know you're aware of it. back in the day when we had the Henry Literary Festival. And we were undergoing some of the same challenges and some of the same successes.
Yeah.
Staging this year, but I know Jim would like to be in touch with you.
Sure. Okay, great. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Maybe we could give these kids a bicycle with a basket on the front with full of books.
I like that. Okay, what is it, like the last four numbers?
Yeah.
5767.
How's it going? This is a whole text full of Queen of Hearts.
Hey, I've walked up here a bunch of times, but I've never pulled the card. That means I just keep contributing to the pot.
This whole text is actually just Queen of Hearts. All right. All right. Thank you, Dad.
Thank you.